Okay, welcome everyone. Let me know if you hear me. Um, how's everyone doing? Look, I suffered a little injury yesterday, so you got to forgive the bandage. Split my forehead open uh, on a vehicle, so I'm a little out of it. Um, I'll probably kill the camera for that reason, but I just wanted to come on and say hello to everyone. And Yeah, so I want to get into this Michael Proctologist Proctor's testimony. Um, let you witness it if you have not already. This is part one. We'll have part two tomorrow. But you'll be very interested in this. And that is what it is. So let me say hello to everyone in here. Bobby Smith, what's up? Yeah, they're trying to place the blame on everyone else except all of them. What's up, Kay West? What's up for baby daddy? All right, what's up, Lisa? And Noe, what's up, Noe? All right, so everyone in here, thanks for being in here. Let me kill this camera now because, gosh, ow, I need stitches. So here we go. We're getting started with yesterday's testimony of Michael Proctor.
Board is back in session. You may be seated.
All right, Mr. Lally, your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Trooper Michael Proctor to the stand.
If you want to put those down there, do you mind please step up?
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the evidence given in the court and jury in the case now and here is for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, jurors.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Trooper Michael Proctor, Proctor.
Oh, it's okay, Kay West. Actually, yesterday, that did happen. That did happen yesterday. Oh, what's up with our video here? Is it frozen? Yeah, let me see what's going on with this video.
Into the evening.
Now, from the can, please state. And with.
Okay, it's just glitching. technical issues.
Possible medical situation.
And based on that initial call and that initial information that you received, what, if anything, did you do?
At that point, I knew I needed to gather further information, so I contacted Detective Lank from Canton Police Department to see exactly what transpired in the morning. He had informed me that a male party had been transported to Good Samaritan Hospital with some injuries. Detective Lank didn't have much more information, so I knew I needed to contact the paramedic at the hospital, the individuals treating Mr. O'Keefe.
Before we get to that, if I could, I'm sorry. As far as Detective Sergeant Lank was concerned, was that someone that you called on your own, or how did you get his information, or why did you call him specifically?
I knew he was on scene, so I called Detective Lank.
So that was some information that you had received at some point earlier, and then you contacted Detective Sergeant Lank.
Correct.
And following that, you reached out to whom? I'm sorry?
This firefighter Anthony Flamati.
And with reference to that conversation, what, if anything, did you learn from that?
Firefighter Flamati informed me that
I'm going to allow it.
Firefighter Flamati informed me that Mr. O'Keefe had some injuries to his right arm, some abrasions to his right arm, some injuries to his eyes, a cut to the nose area, and he put a 10% chance of survival for Mr. O'Keefe.
And then based on that information, who did you call next?
I contacted Sergeant Buchanan, advised him that this sounds like it's more than a medical situation.
And what, if any, decision did you and Sergeant Buchanan come to with regard to what to do or where to go or what the next steps should be?
So there's a couple different steps. Number one, it was blizzard conditions, and we operate, Ford Fusions or Chevy Malibu. So we got authorization to use our personal vehicles that are four-wheel drive, and to meet at Canton PD and to speak with the responding officers.
And about what time was it that you and Sergeant Buchanan arrived at the Canton Police Department?
It was approximately 10 a.m. that morning.
And so, Trooper Proctor, if I could ask you, whereabouts were you at about 8:22 in the morning?
Home.
Had you shoveled out of your driveway at that time?
Not yet.
Had you cleaned off your car at that time?
No.
So you arrived at the Canton Police Station about 10 a.m. or so. When was it that you arrived in relation to Sergeant Buchanan, if you know?
At Canton PD?
Yes.
I don't recall if Sergeant Buchanan arrived first or myself.
But suffice it to say, at some time you both arrived around 10 a.m., is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And where did you go with the Canton Police when you arrived there?
We spoke with the Sergeant Sean Good.
And what, if anything, did you learn from Sergeant Good?
Sergeant Good informed us that while he was on scene, he identified Kerry Roberts, Jennifer McCabe, Karen Reed. He also informed us that Jennifer McCabe was out early in the night at a waterfall bar in Canton with some individuals, and that she was the one who called 911 when they found Mr. O'Keefe in the snow that morning.
Now, with regard to the parties that you just mentioned, prior to January 29th, 2022, had you ever met or were you aware of either Jennifer McCabe or Kerry Roberts or Karen Reed or John O'Keefe?
I've never met any of them.
And at some point subsequent, did you have occasion to meet and speak with Ms. Reed?
Yes,
And do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
I do.
Just for clarification purposes, if you could identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing.
She's seated between Mr. Jackson and Mr. Yannetti wearing a pinstripe sport coat.
No, I just asked the record reflect identification of the defendant.
Yes.
Now, after you speak with Sergeant Good, did you speak with anybody else at the Canton Police Station?
No.
And where did yourself and Sergeant Buchanan go from there?
We then traveled to the home of Matthew and Jennifer McCabe.
Now, with reference
Are you guys starting to notice a pattern here? You noticing a pattern here? How is it that Jen McCabe has her hand in every fucking aspect of this crime? How is it? How is it that Jen McCabe has her dirty hands in every aspect of this crime?
So when I say you and Sergeant Mechanic, at how long a period of time was it that you were with Sergeant Buchanan on that date of January 29th?
It's from 10 a.m. approximately when we met at Canton Police Department until when we returned to the Canton Police Department that afternoon around 5:30 in the afternoon. So all day. And we also had a debrief meeting with just the troopers in my office at Canton PD. So at least from 10 to 6, 7, because we also went back to the office with some evidence.
And so from that entire time, from 10 in the morning until later on in the night, other than maybe short drives in individual cars, were you essentially with Sergeant Buchanan that entire day?
Yes, we used Sergeant Buchanan's pickup truck that entire day. I left my personal vehicle at the police department, and I rode with Sergeant Buchanan all day and into the evening.
Now, from the Canton Police Station, where did you and Sergeant Buchanan go?
The McCabe's house in Canton.
And who, if anyone, did you speak with there?
We spoke with Matthew and Jennifer McCabe, as well as Brian Albert.
And those interviews that you conducted, were they sort of...
Spoke to everyone who's acting guilty as fuck and like they're hiding what really happened to John O'Keefe. You're starting to pick up on a pattern here?
How were they conducted?
One-on-one, Sergeant Buchanan and myself kind of rotated out Jennifer, Matthew, and Brian. So first we interviewed Jennifer, and then once that was completed, we had her step out, go to a separate room, brought in Matthew, and then the same thing with Brian.
And for the balance of the interviews that you conducted several interviews over the course of your investigation in this case, is that correct?
Correct.
And for those interviews, as far as individually done, was that primarily what you did with each of the people that you interviewed over the course of the investigation?
Yes, each interview conducted was either with Sergeant Buchanan or another trooper in one-on-one, with the exception of Julie and Chris Albert, I believe, were in the same room as us.
Now, with respect to, I believe you just answered it, but as far as each of the interviews that you conducted over the course of your investigation, was it at any point in time, was there an interview that you conducted just by yourself?
There was just one.
And who was that one that you conducted by yourself?
That took place just at the grand jury across the street. It was the Currans. I had some difficulty locating them, so when they appeared for grand jury, I interviewed them one-on-one by myself prior to their testimony at grand jury.
You had attempted to meet with them prior to them coming to the grand jury, is that correct?
Yes,
And they had not been responsive to that?
correct.
However, they were responsive to the summons, and so you interviewed them before they went into the grand jury, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Other than those, as far as Mr. and Mrs. Curran, every interview that you conducted was in the presence of at least one other trooper?
Correct.
Now, as far as you mentioned one name that we hadn't discussed before at the McCabe household, a Brian Albert. Prior to January 29th, 2022, had you ever met or were you aware or did you know Brian Albert?
I never met Brian Albert until that interview.
Now, following the interviews that
Bullshit.
you conducted
Bullshit.
at the McCabe household,
I'm calling bull on that. I'm calling bull on that. Come on, man.
where did you go from there?
After the interviews at the McCabe household, Sergeant Buchanan and I traveled to Good Samaritan Hospital for two reasons. One, we knew Miss Reed was there receiving treatment for Section 12. And two, we wanted to view Mr. O'Keefe.
And when you arrived at the Good Samaritan Hospital, was the defendant, Ms. Reed, still at that facility at that time?
We'd spoke with the security staff at Good Samaritan Hospital. They informed us that Miss Reed was released
I'll allow it, just as to where you went.
That Miss Reed was released several hours prior to our arrival.
And do you know about what time it was that you arrived, yourself and Sergeant Mechanic, at the Good Samaritan?
Maybe approximately 1 o'clock.
And you mentioned there was a second reason, and that was to view Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
That's correct.
And did you have occasion, or did you have a chance to view Mr. O'Keefe's body at the Good Samaritan?
We did.
And where was that within the hospital?
I was in the emergency room.
And when you went to where Mr. O'Keefe was, can you describe for the jury what, if any, observations you made of Mr. O'Keefe's body at the time that you observed?
Okay. What did you observe about John O'Keefe's body?
The first thing I noticed on Mr. O'Keefe is he had abrasions on his right arm. On the top of his right arm, there's approximately 6 to 8, ranging from his forearm to his lower bicep. There was no injuries underneath that forearm. Both eyes were swollen and black and blue. He had a cut on, I believe it was his right nostril.
Oh, you mean like he got into a fist fight? Like he got beat up? His face is cut, his eyes are black?
Another smaller cut, I believe it was on his left eye. Those were the injuries that kind of jumped out to me.
At any point in time, did you make any observations of the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head while you were there?
I did observe blood on the back of the head. I wasn't able to tell if there's any significant trauma to the back of his head.
Now, from the Good Samaritan Hospital, yourself and Sergeant Buchanan, what, if any, items did you secure in evidence from the Good Samaritan Hospital?
So after we viewed Mr. O'Keefe's body, we observed a pile of clothes in the corner that hospital staff had cut off Mr. O'Keefe and kind of piled into the corner. The one thing that had jumped out to both of us was one sneaker. And it's fairly common in a motor vehicle pedestrian strike that
Sustained. Next question. I'll strike from fairly common, the observations were made.
As far as the clothing that you observed, can you describe the clothing that you observed?
yes. We observed one black sneaker with the Nike logo, a pair of blue jeans, a belt, boxer shorts, an orange t-shirt, and a two-tone gray, light kind of hooded sweatshirt type of material.
Now, Trooper Proctor, over the course of your career responding to unattended deaths or death investigations as a member, as a detective of the unit, how many of those have involved situations where a pedestrian was struck by a motor vehicle?
Well, I've been in the unit, maybe 3 or 4, and then I've had other experiences on the road.
And as far as the other experiences on the road, can you expound upon those as far as how many or over what time period we're talking about?
About 6 years I spent on the road, so maybe another 3 or 4.
And with reference to those pedestrian crashes, what, if anything, had you seen in those prior investigations in regard to sneakers or footwear of pedestrians involved in motor vehicle crashes?
Objection.
I'm going to see you at sidebar on this.
All right, we got some bullshit sidebar. So he's an expert in pedestrians struck by vehicles because he's seen 3. And even though this guy, John O'Keefe, looks like he got his ass beat in a bar fight, he's got 2 black eyes, a couple abrasions on the face, and a bunch of dog bites on the arm. But in Mr. Proctologist Proctor's expert opinion, after witnessing a whole 3 incidents in which pedestrians are struck by vehicles, he determines that he's not going to investigate whatsoever. He'll just go ahead and go with the program. Protect the thin blue line. Throw this woman under the bus. I mean, how many people beat to death has he seen in his life? Shouldn't he be an expert in people getting their asses whipped? And what would his expert opinion on people getting their ass kicked say about Mr. John O'Keefe's body? We know that there were plenty of canine experts who say that those are absolutely 100,000% dog bites. So,
Now,
Yes.
with reference to your prior experience with pedestrian crashes involving motor vehicles, what, if any, observations have you made on those prior occasions in regard to the footwear with respect to the pedestrians in motor vehicle crashes?
In those experiences, I've observed one, if not both, pieces of footwear remained at the point of impact.
And so with respect to your observations of the clothing, there only being one sneaker of Mr. O'Keefe's property, what, if any, significance did that have to you as far as the sort of steps you took subsequent in your investigation?
That was just a little piece of evidence that Sergeant Mechanic and I picked up, that only one piece of footwear revealed the potential of a vehicle strike.
Now, in addition to, Sergeant Mechanic is one of your supervisors within the detective unit, is that correct?
Yes,
And is another one a Lieutenant Brian Tully?
that's correct.
Now, with respect,
breaking news, breaking news. There was only one shoe near the body, which absolutely means 1,000% that he was hit by a vehicle. No need to look any further. No need to investigate anyone, all the suspect individuals in Jen McCabe's manipulative ass. No, let's just found a shoe. Oh, absolutely a vehicle impact.
to the one sneaker that was found in Mr. O'Keefe's property, what, if anything, with regard to that, did you communicate to Lieutenant Tully?
Objection.
As to how it goes to the investigation,
Yes.
I'll allow it.
So Sergeant Mechanic and I informed DLT Tully that there was one shoe at the hospital.
And with respect to Detective Lieutenant Tully, are you aware that subsequently in the afternoon that there was a search that was conducted in the area of 34 Fairview Road where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
Yes,
And are you aware of what, if anything, was recovered in the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found on that day?
Objection.
I'll allow it as to the investigation.
yes.
And what are you aware?
We were informed, Sergeant Mechanic and I were informed that SIR team and Detective Lieutenant Tully discovered a black Nike sneaker with the white swoosh logo that was a match to Mr. O'Keefe's shoe at the hospital.
Now, from these items of clothing, I'm sorry, let me just let the siren move on.
Yeah, those sirens, that's God speaking. That's confirmation. You see, you did not investigate one single person in that house, even though he looks like he got his ass kicked and he was bit by a dog. Brian Albert is a cop. You're a cop. Just wait until we hear what you've been saying about Miss Reed.
Trooper, in addition to the shoe that you've already referenced, what, if anything else, did you observe about what kind of clothing and the condition of the clothing that you observed in the hospital?
The clothing seemed, it was wet. It was pretty well saturated. The right sleeve had some like cuts to it, like tears to it. There's like blood and vomit on it, if I recall. Those were the observations I had made of the clothing. And they had been cut due to rendering first aid as well, the pants area.
Now, subsequent to viewing these clothing items at the hospital at a later time, did you have occasion to observe surveillance video from a variety of places on the evening of January 28th into the early morning of January 29th depicting Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you note with regard to the clothing that you observed at the hospital and the clothing that you observed in the video?
So the videos I reviewed at C.F. McCarthy's bar and the Waterfall bar were the same clothes Mr. O'Keefe was wearing that Sergeant Buchanan and I had secured at Good Samaritan Hospital.
Now, Trooper, I'm going to ask you some questions just in regard to securing these items specifically as evidence, but in general terms as far as securing items and evidence within your unit. How is that accomplished? How is that done? What do you do with items that you deem of evidentiary value that you then secure?
Generally, if we take an item for evidence, we'll put it in a brown paper bag, document it, time, date, who secured that item, address, where it's discovered, and then we'll bring that back to our office, to the evidence processing area. From there, it'll go to a permanent evidence room that has triple retention. It has an actual key, a key card, and an actual access code. And only 3 members of my office have access to that room: the 2 evidence officers and Detective Lieutenant Tully.
And at this time, on January 29th, 2022, who was assigned as the evidence officers who had access to that room?
So that'd be Trooper David Ichico and Trooper Jeffrey Kukowski.
Did either yourself or Sergeant Buchanan have any access to that evidence storage?
No.
Now, with reference to these items that were seized and, say, items that were seized subsequent during the course of your investigation, did they go through that same sort of evidentiary?
Who the hell asked him what type of retention is in that room or access to that room? No one asked that. Why is he volunteering that information? Because we know there's problems with those clothing and that evidence.
Storage process that you were speaking about before.
Yes.
Now, with reference to, in addition to the clothing items, at some point did you come into possession and seize Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes.
And do you recall where it was that you received or retrieved Mr. O'Keefe's phone from?
We received it at the Canton Police Department.
And was that prior to you going to the Good Samaritan?
After, I believe.
After. So following the Good Samaritan, where did you go from there?
So after the Good Samaritan Hospital, Sergeant Buchanan and I traveled to 345 Country Hill Drive in Dighton.
And why did you go to that location?
That was the residence of Miss Reed's parents' home, and having a brief conversation with Miss Reed on the phone, she informed us she was at her parents' house.
So you had called Miss Reed, spoken to her, and informed her that you were coming there to speak with her, correct?
Correct.
And just as you had done with Ms. McCabe, Mr. McCabe, you spoke to Ms. Reed within her home?
Yes.
And who, if anyone else, did you reach out to on your way there with regard to local law enforcement as you were driving to Dighton?
We contacted the Dighton Police Department just for a couple of reasons. One, it's a common courtesy. If we're in another town, we just kind of give the local PD a heads up. But also, we needed to coordinate a plow truck and potentially a tow truck as well. And
why did you need to coordinate those things?
At the time, there must have been at least a foot of snow on the ground, more. And it was a dead-end cul-de-sac. So,
no, there wasn't more than a foot of snow. Come on, brother. There was barely half a foot of snow on the ground. Come on, man.
Which made it difficult to navigate. So we requested the plow to clear a path for Sergeant Buchanan and I to get down the roadway, as well as clear the driveway of the residents, so the tow truck could pull into the driveway.
Now, as far as the drive from Good Samaritan, that's in Brockton, is that correct?
Yes.
As far as the drive from the Good Samaritan in Brockton to the defendant's parents' home in Dayton, about how long a drive was that, and how would you describe the weather conditions along the way?
Yeah, with the weather conditions were whiteout, high winds, blizzard conditions. We had to travel very slow. It was almost about an hour to get there.
And when you arrived there, you were in Sergeant Buchanan's truck, is that correct?
Correct.
And where did Sergeant Buchanan position the truck in relation to the house at 345 Country Hill?
From what I recall, Sergeant Buchanan went down the cul-de-sac and turned around, and he actually had to let me out first because of the high snowbanks, and then he parked kind of along the snow, pointing essentially to Mr. Reed's house.
And at some point, did members of the Dayton Police come along and join?
Yes.
And do you recall who those people were?
I believe one of the officers' last name was Barrios.
And had you ever met that officer before?
No.
Now, with respect to the home, had you and Sergeant Buchanan approached the home at any point prior to the Dayton Police showing up?
I can't recall if, no, they had arrived first before we approached the home.
And when you approached the home, you went, what did you traverse? How did you get from the street to the home?
We walked down the driveway, and then we observed Miss Reed's Lexus parked in the driveway, the front of it facing one of the garage doors. And that's when we observed the broken taillight on the right side of the vehicle. We then proceeded to the front door. The snow was about up to our waist, and knocked on the door and was greeted by Mr. Reed.
So as you're walking up the driveway towards the home, you see Ms. Reed's vehicle, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's a vehicle that you later subsequently found to be registered to Ms. Karen Reed, is that correct?
correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
So I'm showing you documents, 4 pages in length, just ask you to review that after you finish.
Excuse him while he checks the receipts, just to make sure that he has his story
recognize
straight.
that document, sir?
Yes.
And what do you recognize it to be?
The registry motor vehicles, it's the certified document for Miss Reed's Lexus.
Is that the plate information that's contained in there, is that the same plate that was affixed to Ms. Reed's vehicle on that day?
Yes,
And that also details sort of the history or how long she's had possession of that vehicle, is that fair to say? Going back to, I believe, 2021, is that correct?
yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Call will seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No objection.
Now, with respect to Ms. Reed, at some point you go into the house, is that correct?
Yes.
And how do you enter into the defendant's parents?
So Sergeant Buchanan and I, after we had knocked on the front door, Mr. Reed directed us around the corner, opened up the garage door for us, and invited us in.
Now, if I could take you back to, I'm sorry, just as far as when you're coming up the driveway and you're passing by the defendant's vehicle, you mentioned some damage that you observed to the right rear passenger side area, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you describe to the jury what it was specifically that you observed as far as damage to that area of the vehicle?
Yeah, the right rear taillight had essentially large pieces missing from it.
So you proceed inside the home, and where is it that you're directed, and where is the defendant?
We're invited into a large living room area. Miss Reed is seated on a couch, and her parents, William and Janet, are present for the conversation and kind of standing off to the side.
And that conversation goes on for approximately how long?
Approximately half hour, 40 minutes.
And when you terminate that conversation, you come back outside of the home, is that correct?
Yes.
And where is the vehicle at this point?
That is being put on the tow truck.
Now, in addition to the defendant's vehicle, what, if anything else, was taken and seized as evidence from the defendant on that morning?
After confirming the phone Miss Reed was holding was in fact hers, we told her we were seizing the phone and we'd be writing a search warrant for that.
Now, during the course of the conversation that you and Sergeant Mechanic had with the defendant that afternoon at her.
Hold on. Why didn't they seize everyone else's phones who was at that house? Someone explain that to me. Why not seize, I don't know, the phone of Jen McCabe and her husband, Brian Albert, the other Alberts? Come on. Something sounds a little fishy there. So you're only seizing Karen Reed's phone? Why didn't you seize the phones of the McCabes and the Alberts?
Parents' home in Dayton. Were there some questions in relation to contact information for other people that were at bars or different establishments the night before?
Yes, we asked Miss Reed specifically for some of the friends that Mr. O'Keefe was with at C.F. McCarthy's. One person in particular was Michael Camerano. So we observed Miss Reed enter the passcode on her phone, retrieve Mr. Camerano's phone number for us, provided to us, and that just further confirmed that was her cell phone.
Now, through your training experience, when a cell phone is seized from a person, what, if anything, is it that you do with regard to that cell phone to preserve the information on?
Well, the first thing we do is we put it in airplane mode, and then we give it to a cell phone expert in our office, Trooper Nicholas Garino, and he essentially tries to access the data in that phone once a search warrant is obtained.
Now, as far as putting that cell phone in what you described as airplane mode, what is the purpose of that?
It's to avoid if someone wants to go on a tablet or a laptop and access the information on their phone, and they can start deleting stuff off their iCloud. This prevents that.
So you secure the phone, you secure the vehicle on the tow truck, and then where did you and Sergeant Mechanic go from there?
We follow the tow truck from the address in Dayton to the Canton Police Department. We're secured in the Sallyport Bay.
And if you know approximately what time was it that you arrived at the Canton Police Department and secured the defendant's vehicle in the Sallyport Bay?
Yep, so we left Dayton around 4:16 p.m. and arrived in Canton at the police department at approximately 5:31 p.m.
And with reference to the Canton Police Department's Sallyport garage, why was the vehicle taken there?
I wasn't part of that decision, but it's my understanding that it was a heated facility. The other options were, I believe, the barracks in Milton, but that's not large enough to house a vehicle that size, and it's not heated.
And in regard to the heated, what was the sort of purpose or utility of storing it in a heated setting?
Miss Reed's vehicle was covered with snow and ice at the time. It was transported from Dayton to Canton.
And with regard to the Sallyport garage area of the Canton Police Department, at some point were you inside that area?
Yes.
And what, if any, observations did you make as far as the temperature or the heating within that facility?
I noticed it felt good enough to go inside and break off a few pieces of the cracked tail light. so that I could then go plant them at the scene to frame Miss Reed for the death of Mr. O'Keefe?
I don't remember the exact, I couldn't put like a ballpark on temperature, but it was certainly warmer than outside.
Now, as far as the vehicle was concerned, either on scene, either in Dighton or at the Sallyport garage, or at any point in time that you were in the presence of that vehicle, what if any contact did you have? What if anything did you do or observe Sergeant Mechanic to do with regard to that damaged area you described on the right rear passenger side?
Yeah. Sergeant Mechanic and I never touched any part of that vehicle.
Why don't I believe that? I believe you did touch the vehicle and you broke off pieces of the tail light to go plant at the scene. Let's hear that again.
Did you do or observe Sergeant Mechanic to do with regard to that damaged area you described on the right rear passenger side?
Yeah. Sergeant Mechanic and I never touched any part of that vehicle.
And as far as the moving it from sort of the tow truck, and in regard to the heated, what was the purpose or utility?
Sorry, y'all. I want to hear that again because let's just check it out.
Of storing it in a heated setting.
Miss Reed's vehicle was covered with snow and ice at the time it was transported from Dighton to Canton.
And with regard to the Sallyport garage area of the Canton Police Department, at some point were you inside that area?
Yes.
And what, if any, observations did you make as far as the temperature or the heating within that facility?
I don't remember the exact, I couldn't put like a ballpark on temperature, but it was certainly warmer than outside.
Now, as far as the vehicle was concerned, either on scene, either in Dighton or at the Sallyport garage, or at any point in time that you were in the presence of that vehicle, what, if any, contact did you have? What, if anything, did you do or observe Sergeant Mechanic to do with regard to that damaged area you described on the right rear passenger?
Now realize, this is not the defense questioning this gentleman. Okay, this is the prosecutor throwing up throwing a softball pitch to this guy so he can hit it out of the park, setting up the narrative that I never touched the vehicle. Therefore, I could not have broken off pieces of the light to go plant at the scene.
Yeah. Sergeant Mechanic and I never touched any part of that vehicle.
And that's what he was fishing for. So he set it up. He set it up with the softball pitch and the perfect hit it out of the park. We never touched that vehicle. Mission accomplished.
And as far as the moving it from sort of the tow truck into the Sallyport area, how was that accomplished?
The tow truck driver removed it from the tow truck and pulled it into the Sallyport Bay.
Now, as far as prior to leaving that Sallyport area of the garage where the vehicle was, what, if anything, did you and Sergeant Mechanic do with reference to securing that vehicle or coordinating it off in any way, shape?
We tried to set up a perimeter as best we could using caution tape, and just kind of sectioned it off with caution tape.
Now, at some point, you leave the Sallyport area of the Canton Police Station, and where did you go from there?
We had a debrief meeting. So there's other troopers. There's troopers at scene on 34 Fairview Road. There's other troopers conducting interviews. So at the end of the night, members of my office met in a conference room at the Canton Police Department to exchange information as far as what everyone had learned throughout the day.
And as far as that meeting is concerned, that's just troopers from your unit, from your office, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so there were no members of the Canton Police Department that were present for that, is that correct?
No, correct.
And do you know why that was?
They had taken a step back from the investigation. They weren't going to participate in any interviews or anything of that nature.
And how was that communicated to you and Sergeant Buchanan?
The best of my recollection was that debrief meeting that we were informed that essentially Canton PD would be taking a step back from the investigation, and that now this is just solely a Norfolk State Police investigation.
Sounds like they were setting it up for plausible deniability, right? That's what they were setting up. Like, hey, we're framing this lady, so let's establish some plausible deniability and separate ourselves from this investigation.
So before we get to sort of the debriefing and all that's covered in that, as far as when you're on call, you get a call for any kind of sort of homicide or unattended death or anything like that. You then become what's called a case officer for that investigation. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you describe for the jury sort of what the duty or the role is of the case officer vis-a-vis the rest of the members of the unit?
So essentially, a case officer is more of a facilitator. You kind of delegate out tasks, coordinate interviews. The case officer isn't the sole decision maker. I have supervisors. I have that we bounce ideas off of. I get feedback from. I also keep them updated. It's a collaborative effort in each investigation. We're a small office, so when a homicide comes in, everyone essentially drops what they're doing, and we all work on it together. So it's a collective effort to work on these cases, and essentially a case officer is just kind of the record keeper of all the reports that come in and video that comes in. But when it comes down to decision-making time, it's a group effort.
Now, with reference to that collaborative effort that you were just discussing in this sort of debriefing meeting, so there were other troopers doing other things or other tasks throughout the course of the day of the 29th, correct?
Yes.
And so what was sort of the purpose of or not specifically what was discussed, but in general terms, what was discussed during the course of this debriefing?
The taillight piece is found at 34 Fairview Road by CERT. The one sneaker found at 34 Fairview Road. Interviews conducted, and then Sergeant Buchanan and I also shared everything we had kind of learned throughout the day as well.
And that debriefing meeting, if you know about how long approximately did that take in this case?
I can't recall, maybe half hour.
And so following that meeting, where did you go from there?
Sergeant Buchanan and I had secured some evidence, the clothing from Good Samaritan Hospital, the additional sneaker found at 34 Fairview Road, as well as the taillight pieces discovered at 34 Fairview Road, and Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone and Miss Reed's cell phone, and him and I transported those to the office in Canton.
And when you transported them to the office in Canton, what, if anything, did you do with those items?
The two cell phones were given to Trooper Nicholas Garino, and the clothing was laid out on top of butcher paper to dry out in our evidence intake area. And then the bag taillight pieces were set aside in the evidence intake processing area. Sergeant Buchanan and I didn't have access to the permanent evidence locker area, so we just secured them in the temporary intake area.
And that leads me to my next question. As far as the area that you're talking about with regard to the clothing items and the other items that you secured beyond the cell phones, that was in a secure area of your office, is that correct?
Correct.
And by secure, I mean restricted access to the troopers within your unit, correct?
Correct. It's you need a key card, and it's also equipped with an alarm.
Now, following that, as far as these items of evidence and other items of evidence that are seized throughout the course of an investigation, how is it that they go, or what, if anything, is done, if you know, between the time that they go from this temporary storage area to the permanent storage area?
Yeah, I'm not an evidence officer. I never have been. My understanding is once it's in the evidence processing area, it gets put into the permanent evidence room that only, like I said, two troopers and the detective lieutenant have access to. And it's the evidence officer's responsibility to process that material when they see fit.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to February 1st of 2022. Were you working in regard to this investigation on that date as well?
Yes.
And at some point, did you have occasion to go back to the Canton Police Department, specifically in the Sallyport garage area?
I did.
And what was the purpose of you going out to the Sallyport garage on that day?
Pursuant to a search warrant, we were processing Miss Reed's Lexus SUV.
And when you say we, who, if anyone else, was present with you, or who, if anyone else, did you contact in reference to the processing pursuant to that search warrant of the defendant's vehicle?
So we had a chemist from the State Police Lab, Miss Maureen Hartnett, as well as a trooper from Crime Scene Services, Trooper Zachary Clark. And then later in the day, the accident recon team, Trooper Joe Paul, had arrived as well.
Now, if I could just ask you a couple questions in regard to Crime Scene Services section. Can you describe for the jury sort of what their role is in regard to investigations that you do and how they're sort of contacted?
So in any scene, if it's required for it to be documented, Crime Scene Services will arrive. They'll document the scene with photographs. In more serious situations, in a homicide, for instance, they'll actually take video as well as dust fingerprints.
Now, with respect to this particular investigation, there were a number of different areas or different times when Crime Scene Services was contacted to document things, correct?
Yes,
And that would include a Good Samaritan when you observed injuries to Mr. O'Keefe.
correct.
That would include the autopsy that was performed to Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes,
That would include February 1st in the Sallyport garage when the search warrant was executed on the defendant's vehicle.
correct.
That would include subsequent searches that occurred at Fairview Road, is that correct?
Yes.
And with respect to each of those instances, if you know, was it ever the same trooper from Crime Scene Services section that came out and memorialized each of those respective areas?
Yeah, it was a different trooper each time.
And is that something that you or any member of your unit has any control over whatsoever as far as who shows up from Crime Scene Services to memorialize or document a scene?
No.
Now, with respect to the search warrant execution on February 1st, what I want to ask is between the time that you were in the garage on January 29th, 2022, and the time that you're there for the search warrant execution on February 1st, had you been in that Sallyport area of the Canton Police Station at any time in between?
No.
Now, with respect to the taillight area on the passenger side of the defendant's vehicle.
Once again, trying to distance Proctor from the possibility of breaking. Just a moment, please. Trying to distance him as far as possible from the possibility of breaking off pieces of that tail light to go plant at the scene. So think about how important it is to the prosecutor to accomplish that goal. Because this is the second time now he's trying to establish the narrative that Proctor and or Buchanan did not go near the broken tail light to break pieces off to go plant at the scene.
What, if any, differences or what, if any things you note sort of between your observations of the tail light on the 29th versus your observations on February 1st?
Yeah, the only difference from the 29th to the 1st was snow and ice had melted from the taillight.
So as far as the condition of that particular...
No, let's clarify. Also, there was more of the plastic missing Let's be honest here.
The taillight, was it in essentially the same condition that you observed it on the 29th when you observed it on the 1st?
Yes, it was still broken and large pieces missing from it.
But as far as the broken status of it and the pieces that were missing, was it any more broken or any more pieces missing from it when you saw it on the 1st versus when you saw it on the 29th?
No.
And with respect to the taillight housing for that vehicle on that particular day, what, if anything, happened with it on that day, if you know?
The state police chemist, Ms. Hartnett, had it removed, which she brought to the lab herself.
So she had it removed it herself, and then physically took it with her when she left to the lab?
Yeah, it was with the assistance of a Canton police officer who had an auto body shop, so he's kind of well versed in cars, so he was able to assist the chemist with removing the housing unit.
Now, at any point in time on that day of February 1st, 2022, did you come into contact physically or otherwise with that tail light? Did you handle it in any way, shape, or form?
No.
Your Honor, if I may, with the court's permission, I would request to publish.
Just really pushing this point.
Give me one moment, Your Honor. If I may have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
My apologies, Your Honor. With the court's permission, if I could publish a portion of Exhibit 34,
Okay.
the Sally Port video. Ms. Gilman, if I could have from February 1st, 2022. At approximately 9:12 a.m. You can just pause it right there. Thank you. Your Honor, if I may, it may be easier and more visible with this particular video with the lights on.
Okay,
Try that.
sure.
Trooper Proctor, directing your attention to what's up on the screen is Exhibit 34. Do you recognize what's depicted on the screen?
Yes, that's the Sallyport area Canton Police Department and Miss Reed's Lexus kind of roped off with yellow caution tape.
And this is the execution of that search warrant that you were speaking about before, as far as your presence and some of the other members of the state police and the state police lab that you were talking about.
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could run it from here for just a few minutes. Sir, while this is going, if I could just ask a couple questions as far as people within this video, do you recognize anyone in this video?
Yeah, myself, kind of the top of the screen. Trooper Zach Clark, we the one with the camera taking photographs of the vehicle.
Now, with reference to this video from the Sallyport Garage of the Canton Police Department, what, if anything, did you learn over the course of this in regard to how that video is recorded, or how it's, what, if anything, sort of activates that video?
Objection.
Ask it differently, Mr. Riley.
As far as this video is concerned, is this one continuous time frame that we're looking at, or how is it?
Objection.
Sustain.
My understanding, it's motion
That
active.
means you can't answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can ask a different.
I'm not sure there was anything said.
No.
All right. I'll strike if there was anything. But, Mr. Lally, just ask a question, please.
With respect to this video, as far as the recording is set up, how is that activated, or how does it record?
Objection, same question.
Yeah, how does he know that? It's sustained.
Have you watched this video or other videos from the Canton Police Department Sally Port Garage?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you note with regard to timing? As far there is a timestamp on the video, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you note with regard to the timestamp on this video or the other videos that you observed with regard to how time moves throughout the video?
The timestamp on the video tends to pause, indicating it's motion activated.
Last one.
It tends to pause. I'll strike after that.
This film, if you could run it to about 9:24. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. Thank you very much. Now, Trooper, with regard to that taillight that was then taken by Ms. Hartnett to the lab, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point, that was returned to the custody of the state police, your detective unit?
Correct.
And do you have that taillight housing with you today in court?
I do.
And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, if the trooper could retrieve that?
Okay?
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Probably be easier that way. Sir, you can stay right there. And then you and I have, sir, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
That's I recognize that to be the housing unit.
And as far as you're recognizing in the housing unit, is there any sort of denotation or anything on the outside of that box indicating what's contained therein?
There's a State Police Crime Lab sticker with the number associated with it. It also indicates fragile and evidence tape that is initialed and dated as well when it's sealed up. And the sticker also says passenger side TA, indicating taillight.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would seek to admit and introduce that as the next exhibit.
Do you want it out of the box first, Mr.
If
Jackson?
we could just take a quick look at it.
Sure.
Sure.
With the court's permission, if
Yes.
Oh my God, this is laborious. Laborious. This is why I'm carefully choosing what to review, because there's no way we're sitting through 8 hours of this every day. I'm only getting the highlights. This is ridiculous. It's a dog and pony show. Look, I'm a cop. I know how to wear a suit. Just wait till you hear his text messages. You guys get ready for that.
Trooper, you can go ahead and put that back in the box. Thank you very much.
Put it on the bag. We need to mark that, and we're going to mark it twice, folks. We're going to mark the bag within the box, and we'll mark the box as well. Thank you. Nancy.
I'm sorry, Trooper, if you could hand that to Madam Clerk.
Sorry, hold on. Hold on, so it's gonna be 544 and 544A.
Your Honor, may I inquire, is the A the light and the 44 is the bag?
We're not even putting it right on the light because it's broken.
Understood.
So we're putting 544 on the bag, 544A on the box.
Understood, thank you.
Could you put that on the bag, please, sir?
544, 544A.
Thank you.
Trooper, with respect to that item that's just been marked as evidence, is that essentially the condition that you observed it in both on January 29th and February 1st?
Yes.
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask,
Once again, look at how much focus is on this is how the light was. That means I did not break pieces off to go plant at the scene. They're really, really pushing on this. They know that this is a huge claim of the defense. It's actually very revealing to me. You would notice how much they are pushing this. Buchanan and I were nowhere near the light. The light was already like this, which is what this whole dog and pony show just was about.
just to publish what's been marked as Exhibit 147.
Okay.
Trooper Proctor, do you recognize what's up on the screen that's been marked as Exhibit 147?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is the right taillight of Miss Reed's Lexus SUV, and you can see large pieces of it are missing.
Do you guys remember? Do you remember the previous video that showed nothing like this as far as the tail light?
Again, is that the same condition that you observed it both on February 1st as well as January 29th, obviously minus the snow and the ice?
Yeah, minus the snow and ice, sir, yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down, Mr. Officer. You can have the lights back up. Thank you. Now, if I could turn your attention to February 3rd of 2022. In the morning hours of that date, where did you go in regard to this investigation?
Sergeant Mechanic, Trooper David Achico, and myself went to 34 Fairview Road along with Trooper Evan Brandt from Crime Scene Services to essentially dig out the snow in pursuit for more evidence.
Now, as far as you mentioned, as far as dig out the snow in pursuit of other evidence.
You mean You mean after you came into contact with the vehicle, you then proceeded to go back to the crime scene and, quote, look for more evidence after it had already been processed? Interesting. Very interesting.
What, if any, tools or implements did you and the other troopers bring with you in order to effectuate that on February 3rd?
We just had kind of standard snow shovels.
And with respect to that, as far as going back to 34 Fairview Road, and let me clarify as far as that's concerned. Prior to that date of February 3rd, 2022, had you been to 34 Fairview Road at any point in time in the course of your investigation?
No,
So that morning of February 3rd, that's the first time that you went.
correct.
Now, with respect to, is that, how many times did you go to the area of 34 Fairview Road over the course of the next sort of days and weeks in regard to potential recovery of items?
So February 3rd, I retrieved items on the 8th, the 11th, and 18th, and was out there on the 10th with Sergeant Mechanic as well.
Now, as far as any of those...
God damn,
occasions
how
that
many
you
days? How many
described that you
times?
went to
How many
the area of
days
34
did you
Fairview
go
Road,
out there?
on any of those occasions were you by yourself?
No.
And with respect to those other occasions, what type of people or who was with you? I know you've mentioned on the 3rd, but beyond the 3rd, those other occasions that you described, who was with you?
On the 18th, I believe it was Trooper DeChico, based on the handwriting on the evidence bag, kind of recognized his handwriting. And the other 2 dates, I don't recall who was out there with me.
Now, with respect to items that were located, starting with the 3rd, do you recall specifically what, if any, items were located on the 3rd?
We've located a black drinking straw, consistent with the one seen in the waterfall video of Mr. O'Keefe walking out of the bar holding the glass. We located his hat that had the American flag that was deep underneath the snow. As we were digging, we discovered that. We further discovered other pieces of plastic as well.
Now, as far as these return trips on successive dates to 34 Fairview Road, what was the reasoning behind that, or what was sort of the plan in reference to why were there so many different dates that you returned to 34 Fairview Road with other troopers?
So after the 29th, there was close to 2 feet of snow that had fallen. And in the days and weeks that had followed, the temperatures ranged from 30 degrees up to 60 degrees. And there was about a half a dozen days mixed in of, heavy rain. So as the snow started to melt, more evidence started to present itself.
So there were items that you recovered on the 3rd, and then items you recovered on successive dates that weren't visible or you didn't see on the 3rd, correct?
Correct.
Now, if I could, keeping you on February 3rd, you mentioned that there was Trooper Evan Brent that was present with you during the search on that day as well.
Yes.
Now, in addition to going to 34 Fairview Road, where else did yourself and Trooper Brent go on that particular day?
We traveled to One Meadows Ave, Mr. O'Keefe's residence.
And is that the first time that you had been to One Meadows Ave or Mr. O'Keefe's residence?
Yes.
Now, with respect to that residence, why is it that you and Trooper Brent went there on February 3rd?
We wanted to document Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle to show that there was no damage to it, as well as the garage doors.
And why did you want to document that?
During the review of Mr. O'Keefe's ring video, particularly the one above the garage that displays the driveway, on the 29th at approximately 5:07 a.m., Miss Reed's pulling her vehicle out of the garage door, backing up towards Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, and comes extremely close, if not slightly hitting the vehicle. So we want to at least go.
Hold on. Bullshit alert. Bullshit alert. She does not come extremely close. She literally strikes the vehicle because you can see the vehicle move. She hits the truck and the truck moves. Okay? This is likely where she cracked her tail light. This is bullshit. Like, this is a police officer. This is a state trooper who is misrepresenting what is clear to anyone's eyes. The fact that she strikes his vehicle with her vehicle and it's clear because the vehicle jostles. Let's back it up 30 seconds because I can't believe the amount of bullshittery right here.
Backing up towards Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle and comes extremely close, if not slightly hitting the vehicle. So
Look, brother, look, bro. There's no question about it. So why don't you tell the truth? She hits his vehicle. It's fucking clear. Like, you're being ungenuine.
we want to at least go document that there was no damage to Mr. O'Keefe's car.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish that for the jury as far as what's been marked as Exhibit 6, video 153.
Okay.
Trooper Proctor, with regard to this Ring video, how was this obtained, if you know?
So we first observed it through Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone on the Ring app, and then I wrote a search warrant for Ring itself.
And as far as the videos that you received from Ring, did they match what was on or what was viewable being the Ring app on Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone?
The videos on Mr. O'Keefe's app, yes, it was what Ring produced, matched.
So as far as any videos that were present that you received pursuant to the search warrant, or any videos that were not present, that was consistent with what you observed on Mr. O'Keefe's app on his phone?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could press play through here. Now, Trooper Proctor, with regard to this video, you've seen this before, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, at the point from this video, are you able to discern who the operator of that vehicle is?
Based off the attire, Miss Reed driving.
Now, with respect to when that vehicle, the defendant's vehicle, if you could, there's a laser pointer up there in front of you on the desk. If you could, I would just ask you to draw the jury's attention to what, if any, vehicles you observe in this video and whose vehicles you believe them to be.
So right there, it's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle and Miss Reed's vehicle.
Now, as far as when those vehicles come close or come into contact with each other, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle is concerned, what, if anything, do you observe, like, on Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle at the time?
There's some snow you can see on the back window here, the bumper and the windows here is starting to be covered in snow.
And as far as when that vehicle comes close to or makes contact with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, what, if anything, do you observe the snow to come off of the car at that point?
I do not know.
Now, with reference to the back area of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, specifically in the area of the ground, as far as that area on the ground, what, if anything, did you observe in reference to any red pieces or any pieces of taillight or plastic or glass or anything in that area that you observed on this video?
So this area here is, you can see the white snow. There's no red pieces of taillight, which would show up in the contrast of the white snow.
Please tell me if you could run it from there for a moment. as far as the damage area that you were discussing previous that you observed in the January 29th in the Sally Port, February 1st in the Sally Port, and then the item that was just marked as evidence. What, if anything, do you observe in the right rear passenger side taillight area of the defendant's vehicle from this video?
You can see the inconsistent lighting. If you compare it to the left versus the right, there's a gap right there.
Yeah, but do you notice something? Do you notice something? Look at how small that gap is. Look at how small. This is not heavily damaged like the piece he just showed earlier from the paper bag. There's no comparison.
And from what you observed from that video, does that appear to be consistent with what you observed on January 29th at the Canton Police Department, February 1st, and in the item of evidence that was just marked?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kilman, you can take that down. Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Thank you.
Bullshit. Bullshit. That's two totally different appearances of the tail light.
Now, sir, you proceeded to 1 Meadows Ave for the first time on February 3rd, is that correct?
Correct.
And Trooper Brent from Crime Scene was with you and took some photographs, is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
And Trooper, I'm showing you a set of 10 photographs. Ask you to view those, look up when you're finished. And Trooper, just generally speaking, do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
Yes.
And what do you recognize them to?
The first picture is the front door of Mr. O'Keefe's house, and it's also Mr. O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse.
May I approach, Ron?
Yes.
I'll seek to introduce and admit as the next 10 exhibits.
No objection.
Okay. Thank you.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could just have permission to publish just a few of those photos for the jury.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 7752. And Trooper Proctor, do you recognize what's up on the screen? It's now been marked as exhibit 546.
Yes, Mr. O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse vehicle.
And with respect to this particular foreground here, if you could describe to the jury what we're looking at there.
So that is Mr. O'Keefe's driveway. You see two garage doors there that lead into the house. And above those garage doors is the Ring camera.
Now, with respect to the rear of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, from your viewing of the video from Exhibit 6, from the Ring video, video number 153, if you could, using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to where it is on this vehicle that there's contact, if any, between Ms. Reed's vehicle and Mr. O'Keefe's.
It would have been in this general area here.
And as far as your observations on that date, February
What's the,
3rd,
hold on.
May we approach briefly?
Okay.
Yeah, so once again, it's very laborious here, but you're going to see the prosecutors here is trying to show that there's no evidence of damage on O'Keefe's vehicle, as if that would mean that it's impossible for Karen Reed's taillight to be cracked or damaged. But keep in mind, the taillight is plastic. It was very cold temperature. Is it possible that she backed into the vehicle, thereby cracking the taillight without leaving any visible damage on Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle? Yes, it's possible. So is this pointless? Yes, it's pointless. But what's the agenda here? The agenda is to try to disrupt or sort of implant a narrative that the damage in large part had to have occurred when she backed into Mr. O'Keefe, not when she backed into his vehicle. Although O'Keefe looks like he was beat up in a street fight, attacked by a dog, and left out in the cold. He has no broken bones, which would be more indicative of a strike by a vehicle traveling at a good speed. This entire thing makes no sense. I believe reasonable doubt has already been established. And when you combine that with the bizarre behavior of Jen McCabe and her husband, bullshit Buchanan's untrustworthy testimony, and the forthcoming crass text messages by Proctor, it smells.
You are unmuted.
It smells, and it really does seem like you have a house full of cops and their family members trying to protect their own.
Trooper, when you were in the driveway of Mr. O'Keefe's residence on February 3rd, 2022, you had occasion to make observations of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, damage did you observe to the driver's side rear area of the vehicle?
I didn't observe any significant damage or any damage.
As far as the entirety of the vehicle, that was all photographed on that day by Trooper Brent, is that correct?
Yes,
And memorialized in those photographs that were just presented to you, is that correct?
correct.
As far as your observations on that day or in those photographs, what, if any, damage did you observe to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
I did not observe any damage.
Madam Clerk Trump?
Yes.
So there's another 8 photographs that I placed before you. Have you had a chance to review those?
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize what's depicted in those 8 photographs?
Yes.
And what do you recognize those to be?
More photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle as well as the garage doors.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I will proceed to introduce and admit the next 8 exhibits.
No objection.
Exhibits 555 through 561. Thank you.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish just a few of those to the jury as well.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 7779. And Trooper, do you recognize what's depicted on the screen now as exhibit 559?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury what we're looking at in 559.
It's the rear bumper area of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle,
Is that the driver's side or the passenger side?
the driver's side.
And what, if any, damage did you observe in that area of the vehicle on February 3rd when you were there?
No damage.
Now, with respect, Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 7780. Next one, actually. And sir, do you recognize what's up on the screen and what's now been marked as exhibit 560?
Yes, those are the 2 garage doors of Mr. O'Keefe's house.
And what's contained up on that screen, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed in Mr. O'Keefe's garage doors on February 3rd?
Yes.
And with respect to those garage doors, what, if any, damage did you note or observe on those garage doors at any point when you were there on February 3rd?
I did not observe any damage to the garage doors.
Can we please stop the beating of a dead horse? Jeez, this is pointless. Just tell the jury what you want them to believe.
Now, Trooper Proctor, subsequent dates following February 3rd, specifically February 8th, 11th, and 18th. Did you have occasion to return to 34 Fairview Road on those days?
I did.
And you had mentioned a little bit about sort of changes in the weather. What, if anything, sort of evolved as far as the weather was concerned between the dates of February 3rd when you were there and February 8th, 11th, and 18th?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the weather pattern had kind of fluctuated from 30 degrees up to 60 degrees with a handful of days of heavy rain mixed in. So that caused a lot of snow to melt as well.
And with respect to each of those respective days of February 8th, 11th, and 18th, what, if anything, did you observe or recover, you and the other troopers that were present on those days?
Yeah, there's further evidence that was originally buried under the snow because of the warm temperature and the rain and the snow melting kind of revealed itself. More pieces of plastic, clear and red.
Now,
All
with
right.
respect to the residents at 34.
All right, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Why do you have to explain why? Like this, do you see how hard Proctor is trying to convince the jury? He's supposed to be a witness. His job is not to convince the jury of anything. He's adding on extra that's unnecessary, and it's frustrating. It's as if he's down with the agenda. He's down with the narrative. He knows that his job is to convince the jury of certain things. So he's adding on the extra. Okay, so let's back it up a little. I mean, this is just unbelievable to me.
Now, Trooper Proctor, subsequent dates following February 3rd, specifically February 8th, 11th, and 18th. Did you have occasion to return to 34 Fairview Road on those days?
I did.
And you had mentioned a little bit about sort of changes in the weather. What, if anything, sort of evolved as far as the weather was concerned between the dates of February 3rd when you were there and February 8th, 11th, and 18th?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the weather pattern had kind of fluctuated from 30 degrees up to 60 degrees, with a handful of days of heavy rain mixed in. So that caused a lot of snow to melt as well.
And with respect to each of those respective days of February 8th, 11th, and 18th, what, if anything, did you observe or recover, you and the other troopers that were present on those days?
Yeah, it was further evidence that was originally buried under the snow because of the warm temperature and the rain and the snow melting kind of revealed itself. More pieces of plastic, clear and red.
Now, with respect,
You mean more pieces of the taillight that you had broken off and went plant at the scene? That's what you mean?
to the residence at 34 Fairview Road, each of these times that you were at the residence, including February 3rd, where in relation to the house were these items observed and recovered by you and the other troopers on those respective days?
So if you're looking at 34 Fairview, looking at the front of the house, it's to the left side of the property between like the flagpole and kind of the fire hydrant in that general area, the front and left of the property.
Now, with regard to these three subsequent dates, as far as February 8th, 11th, and 18th, these items that were observed and recovered on those dates, where were they in relation to the roadway? Where were they in relation to the hydrant, the flagpole, other sort of markers in the area?
I don't specifically remember exactly if they were around the flagpole because the CERT team came and shoveled an area around. So that stuff had melted first because there was a lot less snow, and then they created more piles. But as far as the general area was by the flagpole and fire hydrant, it wasn't like on the other side of the property. It was in that general area.
And just with respect to those items, were they generally found, or were they specifically found either on the grass or the roadway area?
Grass area.
Asphalt or grass is basically what I'm asking.
I'm sorry, grass area.
And with regard to each of those items that were recovered on those three successive dates, as far as February 8th, 11th, and 18th, did you bring those items with you to court today as well?
I did.
May I approach your honor?
Yes.
You recognize that bag, sir?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
It's an evidence bag containing 3 smaller evidence bags.
And with the court's permission, if you could.
Hold on a second.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Go ahead.
With the court's permission, may the witness remove the 3 smaller bags from the larger bag?
Yes.
Trooper, if I could just, in succession, if I could ask you to please open the bag with respect to February 8th first. And before you do that, I apologize again. With respect to that bag, what, if any, indication is there as to the contents therein?
It says taillight, 1 large piece of plastic, color red, 1 small piece of red plastic, and 1 piece of black plastic. Located 34 Fairview Road, front lawn, left side.
Thank you, sir. If you could please remove those.
Is this dramatic enough for everyone? Are we in full-on theater mode? Dog and pony show?
I'll place those back in the bag.
Here are the pieces that I planted at this site.
Introducing this next exhibit.
No objection.
Okay. Exhibit 563.
Sir, if I could ask you just to retrieve the bag that's marked, retrieve the bag of items that were seized on February 11th. And if you could read to the jury what the description is in regard to that evidence bag.
So it's 2 on the 11th. This one is described as glass fragments. We can't tell how many pieces. It's been taped over. The second bag from the 11th says 3 pieces of clear plastic, 5 pieces of red plastic.
And with the court's permission, may the witness remove those items from the bag.
All right.
Smaller bag in here containing the glass. We'll cut that open as well.
I think that's sufficient.
All right, so, Madam Clerk, are you moving to introduce it?
Yes.
Madam Court Reporter, any objection? We can go ahead and
I
open
want to
it.
object, but I don't know what's in that thing.
Go ahead and open it.
Yes, Your Honor. Right. These items appear to be just further on sealed up and wrapped up and
Do you want him to open every one, Mr. Jackson?
May I approach?
Yes.
I can't see that far.
All right, so
No.
go,
I
show,
don't need a moment. No objection.
how many pieces are in there?
1, 2, 7.
The smaller bag,
So basically, we got a bunch of pieces of plastic broken off the taillight.
brown bag will be
I mean, come on.
564 and containing 7
The question is, how broken was that taillight when you first encountered it? Was it more broken after you came across
Remember, if
it?
you could, the other bag
Did
from the
pieces
11th.
magically end up at the
Those
quote
items.
crime scene, quote? Did you place them there? Or did you have someone else?
sir. If you could put those back in the back.
I mean, are we really supposed to believe
Your Honor, call
that
both
that
the
tail
seats.
light
Submit
got
the next
shattered
exhibit.
all to hell by striking the soft body of Mr. John O'Keefe
565.
without breaking a bone in his
Lastly,
body?
sir, with regard to the fact from the February 18th, again, if you could read to the jury what's indicated as far as the contents therein.
Several pieces of red and clear plastic.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, may the witness remove the
Yes.
items. Thank you, sir. If you could return those items to the back.
Once again, so this tail light was broken to shit
And Your Honor, call both the seats.
because it
Submit
hit
to the
John
exhibit.
O'Keefe
No objection.
at 24 miles an hour.
Exhibit 566, Your Honor.
Yeah, it didn't break his bones, but somehow gave him 2 black eyes, a bunch of cuts on the face, and some dog bites.
Now, Trooper, with regard to each of those items from February 8th, 10th, and 11th, excuse me, forgive me, 8th, 11th, and 18th, those are all items that you recovered from the front lawn area of 34 Fairview Road, is that correct?
Correct.
And what was just displayed to the jury is that essentially the condition that they were in when you recovered them on those respective dates.
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention just briefly regarding the search warrants in regard to the ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's house. Was that one search warrant or more than one search warrant that you did in respect to those ring videos?
There was a second search warrant for the ring videos for Mr. O'Keefe's house.
And if you recall, what was the general time frame that was asked for in that warrant as far as from what date to what date?
The second one, I believe, was January 30th to the 3rd or the 4th, I believe.
Was the first one essentially from the 24th to the 29th?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the video that you received in regard to the first search warrant to Ring, what kind of information did you receive from Ring as far as what beyond sort of the video itself? What, if any, other information did you receive as far as accounts or activity or anything like that?
It was just confirming that the user account was under Mr. O'Keefe's email, and then there was an Excel file where you kind of have to transcribe. So each video has about a 17-digit number associated with it, unique identifier. You take that 17-digit number, and you got to convert it using these Excel files to get the date and time.
Now, with respect to what you received pursuant to the search warrant from Ring, was there any kind of activity log? And what I mean by that, what, if any, information did you receive as far as what sort of devices or how many different devices were able to access that footage?
Yeah, I wasn't able to obtain a activity log of who was using the device, what device was accessing the system. Something, if someone logged in, was not provided with any record of who was logging in on what day or time.
Now, are you familiar with the term, just as far as videos are concerned, or electronic devices, what's referred to as a digital footprint?
Yes.
Now, with respect to some of these for the ring videos in totality that you received and that you also viewed pursuant to the app on Mr. O'Keefe's phone, were there certain time periods where you would have expected to see video in which there was no?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury sort of when those time periods were?
So the ring camera above Mr. O'Keefe's garage, pretty sensitive, so it does not have Miss Reed arriving back at Mr. O'Keefe's house around 12:34 a.m. is approximately was when she should have arrived. The only video, there's a gap from approximately 11:45 p.m. on the 28th to about 5:07 a.m. on the 29th when Miss Reed's backing out. It never has her pulling into the garage. And there's also a second video of Miss Roberts, Miss McCabe, and Miss Reed looking at the broken taillight in the morning.
What, if any, follow-up or inquiry did you make of Ring in regard to those missing videos?
I inquired several different times as far as if a video is deleted, is there some type of a record?
Objection, Your Honor.
That was his inquiry, but next question, I'll allow that.
Now, as far as that term that you used before, as far as a digital imprint, can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean?
Essentially, a digital footprint is if, a video is created, it's going to leave some type of a record in the archives.
And what, if any, information did you receive from Ring as far as their videos system is concerned in regard to a digital footprint?
Objection.
Not what anybody told you, but what you received.
That if a video is deleted,
Objection.
The objection sustained.
Move to strike.
We're going to strike that.
Upon your further inquiry of Ring, were you ever able to obtain any video from those specific sections where you anticipated video would be?
no.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 16th, 2024. Do you recall that date?
I do not, sir.
At some point over the course of your investigation, were you made aware of forensic evidence in relation to the taillight housing that was introduced earlier as an exhibit?
Yes.
And with respect to that, at some point, did you have occasion to meet with a Sergeant Brian Gallerani of the Needham Police Department?
Yes.
And where was that?
In the DA's office.
And who, if anyone else, involved in this investigation as far as yourself, was Sergeant Mechanic with you there as well?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did Sergeant Gallerani do with respect to yourself and Sergeant Mechanic on that date in January of 2024?
Sergeant Mechanic and I voluntarily provided our DNA for comparison testing.
And again, taking me to my next point, that was a voluntary decision that both you and Sergeant Mechanic made as far as availing yourself or availing of that particular testing.
Correct.
And as far as the testing or this, you know how that was, or can you describe for the jury sort of how that sample was collected or how it was conducted?
Essentially, it's just a swab of the mouth under the tongue with like it's basically just like a little pad on a stick, and you get swabbed, and that's how the DNA or saliva is collected.
And as far as those samples that were collected from both yourself and Sergeant Mechanic on that particular day, where did they go from there as far as you know?
It was my understanding, went to the Bodie lab in Virginia.
And I'm sorry, what I should have asked just prior to that, as far as when they left from the room that you were in with Sergeant Gallerani, did you take those swabs, or did Sergeant Gallerani take those swabs,
No.
or where did they go?
Sergeant Gallerani took possession of those items.
Thank you, sir. Now, sir, with reference, over the course of your investigation, you interviewed a number of different witnesses, correct?
Yes.
And from the witnesses that you Were there witness interviews that were conducted outside of your presence in the sense that you weren't there for those particular witness interviews?
Yes.
And each of the interviews that you're aware of, whether they were conducted by you or outside of your presence, were done, with the exception of the currents, done with more than one trooper present, correct?
Correct.
Now, with respect to those witness interviews that you were present for, from the witnesses that you spoke with, along with other troopers that were present with you, who, if any, of those witnesses had you met, or did you know prior to the interview that you conducted?
Yeah, so all the witnesses that I had interviewed, the only individuals that I know or had met prior to this investigation was Julie, Chris Albert, and Colin Albert.
And how is it that you knew Julie Albert, Christopher Albert, and Colin?
Whoops, I hit the wrong button, but listen. Yeah, who does he know? He knows the Alberts. Come on. Who are we fooling here? Let me find that spot again. Let's see. Somewhere around here, maybe.
Upon your further inquiry of Ring, were you ever able to obtain?
Okay, a little further.
Best friend.
Come on, Prof.
We talk about 5-6 times a day.
Ooh, yeah, we're getting to the juice.
Currents, done with more than one trooper present, correct?
Correct.
Okay, here we go.
Now,
Yeah, Lisa.
with respect to those witness interviews that you were present for, from the witnesses that you spoke with, along with other troopers that were present with you, who, if any, of those witnesses had you met, or did you know prior to the interview that you conducted?
Yeah, so all the witnesses that I had interviewed, the only individuals that I know or had met prior to this investigation was Julie, Chris Albert, and Colin Albert.
And how is it that you knew Julie Albert, Christopher Albert, and Colin?
And I will remind you that in large part, Colin Albert is being blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death. Don't forget that. Who this guy directly knows, okay, prior to this incident. So just focus in here.
So my sister, Courtney, her friend growing up, Jillian's sister's Julie. My sister got to know Julie Albert, Julie Daniels is her maiden name, through her friend Jillian. Julie married Chris Albert. So my sister got to know Chris through Jillian and Julie. And then years down the road, my sister had Julie babysit my nephew. Julie would come from time to time and pick up my nephew from school. So that's how they kind of became friendly. And on occasion, they would be over my sister's house or at my parents' backyard, Julie and Chris and their kid Colin, and I would happen to be there.
Let me ask.
Major. So the dude that they are saying killed John O'Keefe, you know his parents and him really well because they hang out at your parents' house. So they're good family friends and sometimes babysit.
This way, as far as where did you grow up?
Canton.
And did you graduate from Canton High School?
Yes.
And as far as any of the witnesses that you interviewed, even the Alberts that you were just talking about, Christopher, Julie, and Colin Albert, were they around the same ages as you or went to high school with you at the same time?
No.
How much older than you would Julie and Chris Albert?
At least 10 years.
And as far as Colin Albert?
Yeah, but they're family friends. They hang out at your parents and babysit your nieces and nephews. Come on. You are directly connected to one of the POIs in this crime. Bottom line.
Albert, what's the age difference between yourself and him?
At least 20.
Fair to say around this time of January 2022, do you know how old Colin was or what level of school he was at that point?
Is senior in high school, I believe.
Is that something that you learned through this investigation or something that you knew independently?
Something I learned through this investigation.
Now, obviously you grew up in Canton and your sister did as well?
Yes,
And your sister's name is Courtney, is that correct?
correct.
And what is the age difference between yourself and your sister Courtney?
She's 2 years older than me.
And how close are you and your sister?
She's probably one of my best friends. We talk about 5-6 times a day about anything and everything, as far as like mostly our children.
And she has, how many children does your sister have?
She got 2,
And about how old are they?
10 and 7.
And you have children as well?
I do.
And how old are they?
2 and 4.
Now, with respect to the conversation that you have with your sister about 5 or 6 times a day, how do you have those conversations? Is it via voice call or in person or text, or if you know?
Everything, FaceTime, phone calls, text messages. We're always kind of keeping each other up to date on mainly our kids.
So all day, every day. So basically you mean all day, every day. You're in communication with her, who is best friends with these people. Okay, I get it. I get it.
Now, as far as Julie and Christopher Albert, when did you interview them in relation to this incident?
Sometime in February. I'd have to look at my report for the exact date.
When did you interview your best family friends about this murder of John O'Keefe?
Sometime in, say, early to mid-February?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to them, who, if anyone else, was present with you when you interviewed?
Sergeant Buchanan.
And do you recall where the interview took place?
Yes, I was at their home.
Now, prior to this date that you went over to interview Christopher and Julie Albert, had you ever been over to that house before?
No,
Had you ever been over to any home where Christopher and Julie Albert had resided then or previously prior to that date?
no,
Had Christopher or Julie Albert, to your knowledge, ever been over to your house?
no.
Now, with respect to...
Notice he keeps looking at the jury right there. He's really trying to convince the jury that he's distanced from these people. You notice like he's being set up perfectly by this prosecutor. So he's like, you never go to their house, right? They never come to your house, and you don't know them that well, even though they're best family friends and they hang out at your parents, where you do visit with them. But no. They're setting him up. I never go to their house. They never go to my house. And I'm going to look at the jury with every reply in the negative to these questions. Check it out again. I'll back it up 1 minute. Here we go.
Albert, when did you interview them in relation to this incident?
Sometime in February. I'd have to look at my report for the exact date.
Sometime in, say, early to mid-February?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to them, who, if anyone else, was present with you when you interviewed?
Sergeant Buchanan.
And do you recall where the interview took place?
Yes, I was at their home.
Now, prior
Okay, remember, watch for the eye contact to the jury.
to this date that you went over to interview Christopher and Julie Albert, had you ever been over to that house before?
No,
Had you ever been over to any home where Christopher and Julie Albert had resided then or previously prior to that date?
no,
Had Christopher or Julie Albert, to your knowledge, ever been over to your house?
no.
Now, with respect...
Wow, that's 3 in a row. 3 in a row. He glanced over to the jury. 3 in a row. Wow.
to Christopher and Julie Albert and Colin Albert will throw him in there as well. How would you sort of describe your relationship with them prior to January 29th, 2022?
I'd classify it as acquaintances.
Ooh, looking back over at the jury. Really trying to convince that jury.
Mr. Lally, why don't we take our luncheon break?
You are muted.
Okay, well, that was headache enough for one day. I believe that was headache enough. Let's do this. Let's reconvene. Let's reconvene because I'm not feeling well. You know, I hit my head. And so, yeah. So I hit my head. So let's reconvene tomorrow and continue on with this. Hopefully, I'll be feeling a little better and we'll try to finish it up. I can't really take much more. But thanks everyone for being here. Lisa, especially you. Thanks for sticking around. All right, so we're going to have at least a part 2 and 3. Okay, we'll have at least a part 2 and 3. But this is important testimony. This Proctor here, remember, he's the lead investigator here. So it's very important to thoroughly go through this, in my opinion. I want to stop it often and comment because I think it's important points here. Yeah, I need some ibuprofen or whatever. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Look at you guys are awesome. I just love you. Look at them. Take it easy. I'm gonna take it easy. I thought I could go through the end of yesterday, but I can't. So we'll pick up on yesterday's tomorrow, and then we'll also have to cover today's. So we have a lot left of Mr. Proctologist Proctor giving you the anal retentive bullshit delivery that exudes conflict of interest, set up on Miss Karen Reed, and general douchebaggery. So Fur Baby Daddy says I never left. Thank you so much, Fur Baby Daddy. And Nancy Drew, tune in tomorrow. Yeah. All right. Yeah. These people, I tell you, these people here are we getting a view into the corruption in Massachusetts? Is that what we're getting? I mean, we already know about it in Indiana. I mean, I think we need to look at every damn state. I mean, right now, are you guys paying attention to Arizona? To old Katie Hobbs, the most despicable individual in Arizona. Yeah, he's a monster. All right, so we'll see you later. We'll see you guys later. I'm out of here. Best wishes for quick healing. Thank you, Icy Cat. All right, and Lisa says low standards in every discipline. These people in Canton have no faith in law enforcement. Right. Unlike the people of Indiana who are assisting the cover-up of the Delphi murders because they're involved in the underground, underworld, criminal underworld. So they have self-interest to protect. So Delphi is covering up for its own murders. But here in Canton, they seem to be done with this. Yeah, it's an absolute farce. But yeah, God bless you guys. I'm tired as hell. I got a headache, so I need to go rest myself. But we'll pick up on Michael Proctor tomorrow. All right, good night, everyone.